Welcome to Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live. I'm so glad that you are giving me a chunk of your afternoon, a little bit past 3 p.m. on the East Coast. And yes, I have my coffee. I have to. It's the way of things every single time. And I think today we have a very interesting guest trying to make impact in the libertarian world. In fact, outside the libertarian world, as many of us are doing. And I bring these guests to you often because I don't want us to only think that all that matters is the presidential, race. It does matter. The presidential race absolutely does matter. You know that. I do the debates. I'm there. But there's a lot of other people doing a lot of other work. And I hear all the time people saying, well, I might support you, libertarians, if you were doing something, blah, blah, blah. And I say, we are doing something. We absolutely are. And someone who is doing something to try to move liberty forward in the United States is the former chair of the LNC and the current executive director of the Libertarian Policy Institute, the man himself, Nick Sarwark. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Larry. How are you?
Awesome. Glad to have you here. And if you want to follow Nick, you can just follow him on Twitter at @NSarwark. If you're listening to the podcast, that's NSARWARK. If you want to see what his institute is doing, very simple, libertarianpolicy.org. So I got to ask you, Nick, why start this? I mean, this is a task, obviously. This is a startup, or was at least. Now it isn't, but it was a startup at least. It was a tough task to get this going. Why do this?
When I decided that I didn't want to seek another term as chairman of the Libertarian National Committee, I didn't want to give up the work. And one of the things that I saw during that whole time was voters would tell me, you guys have been right on a lot of policy. I mean, you were right about cannabis legalization. You were right about marriage equality. We love your policies. We just, we don't want to support your party, or we like to support our own party, or I was born in a different party. And so for what to do next, I thought, if I can let go of the party thing,
Hold on one second. I just want to say I love what you just said. I was born in another party. I just love that. I had to just repeat that. That's very good. It's very good.
Yeah, there's multi-generational stuff that I've seen going around the country. People, my mama and my mama's mama, and you don't want to fight with that. It's something I actually learned from you is when somebody says something like that challenges where you're coming from, don't push back on it. Just let that be. Meet them where they are. And so policy is not partisan. People either want lower taxes or higher taxes. They want weed to be legal or they don't want it to be legal. If we just focus on policy and what change we're making in the world, it's actually a lot easier and more fun than what comes along with trying to be a partisan, right? To only play for your team and play against the other team. We get to lean a lot more into Frederick Douglass's axiom of, I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong. That's the driving philosophy we have. It also lets us, by starting where everyone else is, right? We talk to people in communities and say, what's going on in your community that you don't like? And what's going on in your state that the politicians who are in charge right now just won't fix? Right.
Okay, so hold on. You're going into my next question, which is good. I just want to make sure it's clear. I get why you started. It makes sense. You saw a need. You didn't want to stop the work. So you said, you know what? I'm going to keep the work going. And I see a need. So you're kind of moving to my next question, which is, all right, so a lot of people have tried something like this, right? Oh, I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to make this happen, or I'm going to fix something locally or something like that. What's going to make the Institute different? How's it going to make impact better than others have, or maybe not better than, maybe more consistently, or whatever is your goal? How is it going to do that?
Well, what we're trying to do that's different from how other people are approaching these problems is we're focusing on what change we want to see in the world and letting go of who gets the credit for it. So it doesn't matter from the point of view of the Libertarian Policy Institute whether or not the governor or lieutenant governor that pushes through a 25% reduction in a state's grocery tax whether they are from one party or another party, whether they were a candidate we supported or didn't support, what matters to us is that for everybody in the state of Alabama, they're going to be paying 25% less tax on groceries they buy for their family. That is a real change that you can see in the world. And as of when we're talking right now, there are still 13 states in this country that charge some sort of tax on groceries. The most basic thing that people need to feed their kids, and the government takes a cut out of it. They take a little bit out of your grocery cart. The highest is Mississippi, which is 7%. It's a 7% tax on your groceries there. Wow. And people have hated it forever. That it polls at something like 80% to repeal the grocery tax, but it never gets done. And so we look for those opportunities where there's something people want to see changed in the world. And it's a libertarian policy, right? Reducing taxes is very libertarian, but we approach it in a nonpartisan manner. And we stay very focused on what we're trying to fix, our key 1, 2, or 3 priorities, and keep our candidates that we train and recruit focused on those same priorities. So it's a lot of candidates running for office around a state who are all singing from the same hymnal.
So to be clear, the people who come to your training, they don't have to be registered libertarians. They can be registered whatever or not registered. It's irrelevant who comes to their training. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. We encourage our candidates to run for office in a way that's going to be most effective in getting the policy change. That's our orientation. So, all due respect, if you ran for office with a Libertarian Policy Institute training and, followed our strategy, it's not so much important to us whether Larry Sharp gets elected to the office. What's important to us is, did Larry Sharp make enough of an impact on our policy priorities that things changed in a measurable way for the people of the state? It really is putting the service back in public service, and it fits better with how libertarians approach the world. Most libertarians don't like politics, don't like politicians, don't really like government that much, but they do care about other people, and they're willing to step up if it's necessary to do something for others. This is an approach where we're focused on, can we fix these problems? If we fix the problems, you don't have to elect me. You can elect the other guy if he'll fix the problems. I'm just here to fix the problems.
I'm sure you're gonna have, or you already have, I'm sure, more hardcore big L libertarians say, but the party, Nick, but the party. We have to have big L libertarians, but the party. I'm sure you get that pushback, don't you?
I get some pushback like that, but it's like improv. It's a yes and. If you believe strongly in the Libertarian Party, and like yourself, I'm a lifetime member, right? I'm never going to stop being part of the Libertarian Party. Then you can bring that with you, right? It's not in the foreground, it's in the background, because the focus is, I'm going to fix whatever the core issues are. For example, right now, 2023, we have candidates who are running in Mississippi. And in Mississippi, they have their legislative elections in odd years. They have super early deadlines, and 4 out of 5 seats were uncontested back in 2019, the last time they had elections in Mississippi. We found 3 issues that were just not getting fixed by the powers that be. And they were, the grocery tax was not getting repealed, and it's the highest in the country. The charter schools, opening a public charter school in Mississippi is very difficult. The state put up a giant roadblock to approving new charter schools, to the point that they only have maybe 7 in the state, and half the board that approves them doesn't even want charters to exist. So reducing those barriers would help with educational options. And then legalizing cannabis for adults. They got to recreational, but Mississippi has a huge incarceration problem, and those police resources would be better used not enforcing a war against a plant that, frankly, the government's losing. And by keeping focused on those 3 issues, we build a coalition and we build a discussion that can shake loose the political culture of a state.
So I feel like if I'm reading you right, that if we push the libertarian policies and issues, that we're actually kind of almost building a foundation for more libertarian candidates. Am I right here, or am I reading you wrong?
You're right. There's the least resistance when you're running on libertarian policies if you're running from a Libertarian Party, right? If you choose to run as a Libertarian Policy Institute trained and endorsed candidate, and you want to run as a Republican, you're going to be pushing things that the rest of the Republican Party isn't ready for, right? If you choose to run as a Democrat, you're going to be pushing things that the rest of the Democratic Party isn't ready for. But
okay.
It lets our candidates be ambassadors. And it also, by choosing these issues that are popular with people, that solve real problems, we build trust and credibility with voters. You know, one of the things that libertarians come at this with is we don't have those multi-generational voters who have the tribal loyalty. We don't start with a base. We have to build trust from the get-go. We have to build that as we go. The best place to start building trust is finding an issue where you solve somebody's problem, showing them that you're sincere by your actions, not your words, and then being able to come back the next year at lobbying down at the State House. Then you can go back and say, you know, I ran against you. I didn't win. I got only here.
What I'm hearing here is almost like a local bottom of the ticket type of strategy. And with the presidential election coming up next year, a lot of people are thinking top of the ticket, right? They're thinking president, they're thinking governor, they're thinking all that kind of stuff. Is there a push-pull? Is there a problem that we're focusing on? And I hear all the time, oh, what are we doing? Focusing on the presidential election. Doesn't matter. We're not going to win. Let's only go local. Or the reverse. The presidential election, that's the way people get to hear us. That's how we're going to get ahead. Is there a push-pull? Does that affect you in any way?
It helps. And it's a yes and again, right? Like the improv.
We're doing improv.
It's never no. It's always yes and. So yes, there are a bunch of Americans that don't pay attention to politics other than every 4 years, right? Until there's a presidential race, they really don't care. And that's probably where the majority of American voters are. And that's why it's important to have a presidential candidate that can put forward a vision for the country. But that's going to be primarily federal, right? As far as any policies. And frankly, president is more of a cheerleader. It's a rah-rah position. It's not a doing position. As much as presidents like to take credit for a lot of stuff, they don't do that much. They're more like, you know, a chief booster of the country. But when that presidential ticket comes out, people will see the word libertarian, and then they're going to say, well, I'm considering voting for, you know, Larry Sharp for president. I wonder if
Don't punish me, Nick. Don't punish me.
I wonder if there are other people like him, right? You know, I've got these other races. And the truth is, the policy that happens at your state capital, that affects you every single day of your life.
100%.
Federal policy, 100%. You see it on the news. So where we see the maximum impact that's possible for the resources that are limited, it's at that state level policy at the legislature, right? Because each candidate that you get that either does really well in their race or gets into that chamber, they told everybody what they were doing it for at the outset. These are the three issues I'm focused on. If I'm elected, my priorities are going to be these three things. That's why you sent me to Jackson. And once those things are done, I'm not a career politician. You know, if there's not problems, I'm not staying. Right. Or if somebody else, my opponent, gets elected, what I'll promise you is for the next 4 years, I'll remind my opponent how many people voted for something else. How many people voted for somebody who is very focused on just a few issues? So you can't confuse it with just I'm an anti-Republican or anti-Democrat. No, they chose the candidate who was the underdog, who talked to the issues that mattered to them. Because what is it they say? Everybody's tuned in to WIIFM. What are you going to do for me?
Absolutely. Yes. So let me talk to the audience if I could. If you're listening right now and you like what you're hearing, do me a favor, click that like button. The like button does matter. I have to get past Mr. Al Gore, algorithm. I have to get past the algorithms to the best of my ability. So clicking that like button is going to help. Oh, I got Nick to laugh. Well done. Also, if you're watching this on Twitter, do me a favor, retweet this. Retweet it right now. Every time you retweet it, it's going to help me out and helps out everybody to see it. Now, Nick's given us some time, so let's give him some time in return. If you want to see what he's doing, you can follow him on Twitter at @Sarwark. That's Sarwark to check him out on Twitter. But if you want to see what the Institute's doing, you can do it. Check it out. You can support the Institute too if you want to. Libertarianpolicy.org. You can see what they're doing. Check them out. Check out their board. And you want to donate, you can donate. And if I understand correctly, you can, when you donate, you're supporting them with trainings. So do me a favor, Nick. Tell me about your trainings that you are doing.
Yeah, so we have a sister organization that is more of a startup that only launched this year, the Libertarian Policy Foundation. And we work very closely because the foundation is a 501c3. So that's a tax deductible kind of charity. And it does primarily education, because the one thing that we found from the 2022 election cycle, where we recruited nearly 150 candidates around the country in our Golden Spike states, people loved the experience. They loved the experience of running with other people, running on a consistent theme or message. It gave them a sense of being part of something bigger. But mostly they would say the one thing that I would like more is to know what I didn't know before I started. And
right.
You've been to trainings, you've given trainings, you know that a trained candidate is light years beyond one that doesn't have the training.
100%.
So we worked with a very good instructional designer to develop an entire one-day course that we're calling Amplify, that's going to be held by the Libertarian Policy Foundation in cities around the country. And Amplify training is going to teach candidates everything they need to know from soup to nuts, how to run on libertarian policy, how to be a libertarian policy champion, how to choose issues, how to look at issues from a framework of human respect and, anti-coercion, but then how to focus down on these are the 3 issues that are most priority in your state, right? So it's kind of like, it's a little bit of general and a little bit of specific. And there's a lot of networking and guest speakers coming in the breaks. It's going to be amazing. We actually just today signed the contract. Your listeners are the first ones to hear about it. For our first session, it's going to be September 9th in Long Beach, California. The tickets will be up soon. They'll go out to the email list announcement. So if you visit libertarianpolicy.org and sign up to be on our email list, you'll be sure to get the announcement on Monday. And candidates or activists who want to support candidates who are interested in this training can visit libertarianpolicy.org/apply, APPLY. And that has the application form to be considered for Amplify training. And the idea being that we are going to train people how to meet their neighbors where they are, solve the policy problems that they have, and really build a broad transpartisan coalition around some real change that's measurable, so that when the 2024 elections come up, there'll be an army of people who are ready to get started, right? They already have the gear, they already have what they need, they have access to campaign collateral, graphic design, and a cohort of other people who are running with the same kind of message around the country.
Well, I think you have some fans here. Some people who are popping up here. Arenza says, let's go real change, right? After going, yes, absolutely. Also, let's see, looks like Amy, I saw Amy just in Freedom Fest recently. This sounds like a great strategy. She's liking you. You're doing good, Nick. Look at you go. Sarah says, as someone who would like to run locally one day, this would be a game changer. Oh, look at you. Yeah,
it's what we're seeing is that educational component is in fact the biggest impact you can have. It's not as measurable. We can measure how many people pay a grocery tax, how many people live in a state where cannabis isn't legal, how many people have, access to a charter school for their kids. Those are measurable. And that's how we measure in broad strokes whether or not we're achieving our policy goals. And we tell our donors, this is the concrete progress you have. But you've probably found this in your time, that you talk to somebody and you teach them something. You teach them how to deal with a hostile audience. You teach them how to deal with somebody who says something that might throw them off. they take that training through the rest of their life.
Yes.
Right? When you were trained to do things in the Marine Corps that other Americans didn't get trained to do, you don't forget that. You bring
Absolutely.
that training with you for the rest of your life.
Very true.
And I'm convinced that the educational aspect of what we're doing is the most important thing, because we have an opportunity to shape the next generation of libertarian policy champions. And they don't have the baggage that we have because we're older and we've been through a lot of these fights. We have ideas about what's achievable. Scarred. Well, we know what we've run into in the past. We know what barriers that have stopped us, and frankly, may always stop us because we have that experience. It's like Moses didn't get to go to the promised land. Not everybody sees the end of the road.
Yep.
But these young people who are coming up who don't want Republican policy and they don't really want Democratic policy, they're fed up and they believe they can change the world. We want to provide them a way of looking at the world where they're focused on human respect, where they're not trying to expand government to solve any problems. They're coming up with creative ways to fix things for real people that don't expand government, and show people that there's a different way, that we don't have to argue about what we disagree about. We can come together to at least fix that problem, right?
Yes.
And then we'll fight later.
Yes. Got it. Dave says, in Iowa, about half the state house races and 1/3 of state senate races were either uncontested or were only challenged by one major party and one or more third-party candidates. So this is the kind of place you're talking about, what Dave's talking about. You're talking about that.
Right. Any place where there's not a lot of political competition. The two states in the country with the least political competition, I already mentioned one of them. It was Mississippi, right? 80% of legislative seats going uncontested. Like literally in Mississippi right now, if every Democratic Party member who's running for legislative office, every single one of them won every single race, they wouldn't have a majority of either house.
Got it.
Every single one wins. They don't have a majority. And this is a fact of life in politics. You can't beat somebody with nobody. You have
I live
to
in
give
New
them
York
an
State.
option.
I understand completely.
Right.
Yes.
They don't have to move because there's nothing making them move. Do you know the other state that is the most politically non-competitive? I'll give you a hint. It also starts with an M.
Missouri? Montana?
80% uncontested races.
I don't know.
Think about Mississippi and put it in a mirror.
Put it in the mirror. Alabama?
Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts. Is that right?
Massachusetts.
I would have never thought Massachusetts.
Just like Mississippi, except the colors changed. The colors changed. So in Mississippi, they're all Republicans. In Massachusetts, they're all Democrats. And the other party has pretty much given up around the state. They've just given up. They don't show up at all. They've got backroom deals. You know, I'm only running in this town. And as long as you don't mess with me, I don't mess with you. And we'll stay out of each other's way. You see the same thing in New York. The city's got its politicians. Upstate's got its politicians. And they'll play fight. They'll pretend. They maybe have a real fight from time to time. But you know what you never do? You don't upset that apple cart. Right. We got a balance in this state, and you don't want to unbalance the state, right? It could be unbalanced. What we do is we say, no, that's not good enough. We're going to go unbalance some things. In Mississippi, we recruited 17 candidates who are running for state office right now. 5 for state Senate, 12 for state rep. It is the most candidates from outside the Democratic or Republican parties to run in the state of Mississippi since 1923.
Look at that. I love it. You got some fans here. And he says, amen.
Culture.
Love that. She loves this.
It changes the culture. Next door in Alabama, we just had a great victory, and it came a year after we did our golden spike because we had 60 plus candidates running. We had at the top of the ticket, you know, great candidates for governor and lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor candidate was running in a one-on-one race against the Republican incumbent. Mm-hmm. And she didn't win. She got about 15% of the vote. But one of her things was repealing the grocery tax.
Sure.
Progressive activists have been trying to repeal these taxes in some of these states, sometimes for decades.
Sure.
And they don't go anywhere because they're aligned with one party, and it's not the party that's in charge. And so they don't get their stuff done.
Right.
One election cycle with libertarian oriented candidates hitting this issue from an angle that it wasn't hit before, notching up numbers as high as we had candidates up in the 30s and 40% for something different down at lower levels. That sends a message, and the message was so clear that that same lieutenant governor who got reelected as a Republican shepherded through a 25% reduction in the grocery tax in the state with overwhelming majorities in both chambers.
There we go.
Well, look, we shook something loose. We shook it loose and said, people want it.
Juan says, I couldn't agree with Nicholas. I couldn't agree more with Nicholas. We have to build our foundation locally. I just got 2 Republicans to re-register as Libertarians because of how proactive I've been in local elections, alderman and for school board. And I know Juan, he's in upstate New York. Well, he would say upstate. People in New York City would say upstate. He would not say upstate.
How far out of the city is he?
He's up in Middletown. He's like 2 counties from the Bronx. So, you know, that's not upstate. Unless you're in New York City, then anything north of the Bronx is upstate. So in any case, Juan has been very active, and I think he's doing exactly what you're talking about. He is pushing on issues. He's doing those things, and he's moved others into a more libertarian world. I think he has actually done that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, at pretty much almost all levels of politics below the federal level, it really is about what you're going to do. And you can build that trust and that brand in your style of politics just by getting out there and being active. If you show up at your aldermanic meetings, you show up at your school board meetings, not to yell at anybody, just to be there, to witness, to maybe make a little bit of public comment, ask a couple of good questions, you'll get tapped in. And those are the sort of things that we want to train people on how to do, because a lot of the campaign trainings that are out there, they don't focus on the soft skills, what really gets you ahead in politics, which is you have to talk to people, you have to show them who you are, and you have to make friends, not enemies, right?
Right.
Sometimes you got to make enemies. Everybody's got to make friends.
Yes.
And you should have a ratio that's way higher on friends.
I have some non-serious questions for you from my audience, but I have to ask anyway. Thomas asked, what is your favorite burger?
My favorite burger, are we talking a chain, or what if I can make an ideal burger, what I like?
I'm going to say he probably means like a chain. That's my assumption.
As a chain, I don't have a favorite. I'm pretty open to trying most anything. As far as what I like, you know, I'm a big fan of the Southwestern stuff, being originally from Arizona. So like anything with a nice pepper jack, maybe some spicy chilies, or, you know, a kind of a salsa, something like that. That's kind of what, you know, if I'm making them, that's what I'm making.
There we go. Patty asked, do you have any pets?
We don't anymore. We had,
you're going to lose her vote now at that point. You got to pick up with something good.
My wife got a wonderful little dog, a terrier mix named Sophie, probably about 2 weeks before we first went on our first date. And she just recently passed away at the age of, I think, 13 or 14. And it just hasn't been the right time to get another one yet. But we're dog people, if that's what you're asking.
I think she was asking that. Okay, yeah. So you have answered the question. Very good. So I want to ask you then a serious question, if I could. And by the way, before we even go there, if you are listening to this and you like it, then do me a favor, click that like button. I know I ask all the time. I keep bugging you. Please let me get past algorithm. I need to get past that. So please click the like button. It does matter. If you're watching on Twitter, retweet this right now. It does matter. If you want to follow what Nick is doing, you can follow him directly on Twitter at nsarwark for the view of you listening, SARWARK. And if you want to see what the Policy Institute is doing, and if you want to support them and check out, maybe you want to register for some of their trainings, whatever, head on over to libertarianpolicy.org to check them out. Look what they're doing. Support with a donation if you want to. Jump on, maybe register for the training, whatever the case may be. Please take care of that. So let me ask you what I think is a more important question. What's your biggest challenge right now? I mean, this is not an easy thing to get through. There's got to be a ton of challenges. What's the biggest one right now?
The biggest challenge is people don't know what we're capable of in this area because it's new. So there's a lot of reputational stuff that I have from my time as chair associated with traditional politics, right?
Sure.
You know, whether or not I can do an interview, how much money I can raise, how many votes I can earn, the traditional political side of it.
Sure.
When you go and you want to do something differently from how it's been done before, you know, this idea of running an army of candidates who are focused more on what they want to change than who they are, which party they're part of, that's not the norm. And so there's a lot of initial skepticism from potential sponsors or donors until they see the numbers, right? Like behind me is the Arkansas numbers that we had done before Reno. You know, we spent $25,000. We got 56 candidates. We did this kind of strategy. These were the results. That getting over that hump has been the biggest challenge, and getting our candidates to really focus on what matters to their neighbors as opposed to what matters to them. Because when you're part of a smaller party or movement, typically there's something that's different about you from your neighbors. You've come to a different choice. You've come to a different point of view. And there's a real desire. I think this is natural with humans. If you found something you really like, you need to share that with the world. You want to go tell them the good news. So if the idea that taxation isn't really just, you know, a part of our government, taxation is something that should be criminal, you know, that it's immoral, that's a real game changer in how you think about the world, right? That's out of step with how most people think of the world. The natural inclination is to go run up to them and say, Larry, don't you know about taxation? Don't you see what's going on? And they think you're a nut.
Right.
So you have to bite your tongue a little bit and go, Larry, I heard what you said about your brother who got picked up for, you know, smoking weed. It's ridiculous in this day and age that the cops are wasting their time like that. I may not agree with you about a bunch of stuff, but I think this is a big enough problem. I'm going to take some time out of my life to run for office just to fix that problem, right? And if you agree with me on that, it's kind of like the old Ed Koch line. You know, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, you should vote for me. If you agree with me on 12 out of 12, you should find a psychiatrist.
There we go. Yes, probably true. Yeah, it's probably true.
And so we're just necking it down to almost like a custom built per election cycle policy coalition for each state. These are the top 3 things in 2024 in the state of Idaho. Our candidates are going to be
I have some good news for you. I have good news for you now.
Yeah.
The good news is you didn't lose Patty. So you were good. You didn't lose her. She's with you. She says also that you speak how she feels about a lot of things. So very nice. You kept her. So good.
That's very kind of her. And I just want to let Patty know when Sophie did pass, we did something that I got from another friend who had lost a pet. We actually went out and got a tree and buried her under a tree so that rather than like a little headstone or something that might get, you know, the lawnmower run over it, it's a way that you can, you know, go outside in your yard and remember your pet.
Oh, that is sweet. I love that. That is very nice. That's good. Well, Nick, I got to say, it's been a really good chat. Is there something that I missed, something else we should be talking about or covering that I didn't cover?
You know, I think this covers a lot of it. If people want to find out more, they should definitely visit libertarianpolicy.org, sign up to be a supporter, a donor, apply for a training. That's libertarianpolicy.org/apply if you want to apply to be in those amplified trainings. After Long Beach, we're looking at coming to New England. We're probably going to have one in Texas, Indiana. We're going to be going all around the country. We're trying to get at least 5 or 6 done this calendar year so that we're ready
That's a
to
challenge.
have a big impact in 2024 and get ahead of some of these filing deadlines. I don't know if you know, but states are pushing filing deadlines earlier and earlier to try and make it harder to compete.
Yep.
In Mississippi,
Absolutely.
you had to start filing in January of this year, and the filing period closed the first week of February. Even before the legislative session was over, you had to already be signed up. I don't think they do that on accident.
No. They know what they're doing. I love that. It's good. Wow. All right. Well, Nick, I want to say thanks so much for coming by. Everyone else for watching. Thank you all so much for watching. I might be on today at 7. I might not. I'm not sure. But I will be on next Monday for sure. 9 p.m. I will be on the Sharp Club, 9 p.m. Radio show, Sharpway Radio, next Tuesday at 1 p.m. for sure. Sharpway also next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Either way, I just keep doing this. I'm not sure why. I will see you all very soon.